Hi, welcome to the Ori-Gen concert series. My name is Pablo Aslan, and I'm very happy to be presenting Colombian percussionist and composer Samuel Torres. He will change the way you think a percussionist works. For one thing, he just won a Latin Grammy for the best classical album for Regreso, one of his compositions featuring the Nueva Filarmonia Orchestra, and Samuel as a percussion soloist. It was wonderful to spend time with him this week, and I look forward to hearing all the music he's prepared for us. Here is Samuel Torres.
Thank you for that. That was amazing. Colombia gets often lost in the discussion when we're talking about Latin American countries with great musical traditions, but the depth and the diversity of Colombian music is extraordinary. Can you talk a little bit about the drumming in Colombian music? Because I hear a bunch of different things that for some people it will be easy to connect with other traditions in Latin America, even the clave, Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, there's basically two important styles of music, Afro-Colombian styles of music. The one from the Pacific coast, that is what people know, currulao, and it's very tied to the sounds also from Ecuador and Peru. And for example, the salsa groups that are really famous from Colombia, like Grupo Niche, they all come from the Pacific coast, and they include that feeling of the Pacific coast drumming into the what they call Colombian salsa, from Cali, Grupo Guayacán. They all put elements of this traditional music in the way they interpret salsa, especially in the early recordings of Grupo Niche. And then you have this other kind of sound that it's very important in the Caribbean coast, and of course the most famous rhythm of all of folkloric it's cumbia, and something that becomes more popular now is vallenato, that it's something more, let's say, popular, contemporary. But the cumbia and all the roots and everything that is around cumbia, is the most important thing of the Caribbean coast. These are the two special hand drummings traditions from Colombia.
And what are some of the rhythms that you used in that piece, for example?
It's Yeah, it was interesting because I took the Afro-Cuban clave that it also comes from Africa, and even that we don't have the instrument or the exact rhythm of clave. Of course, everything comes from Africa, so the essence of the rhythm, of the accents, of the syncopation is in basically all the music that comes with the African tradition. So that was interesting, because I could use the clave, but I was playing patterns of 6/8 more in the Afro-Colombian from the Pacific, like currulao, that is very tied to all the Afro-Peruvian music, and to chacarera from Argentina. The way they feel the 6/8 and the 3/4 with the syncopa, but you can play that over the Afro-Cuban clave. And then I began to manage a little bit and evolve to go to a mapale. Mapale is a fast 6/8. El mapale, el mapale. That's the most maybe African original tradition from the Caribbean coast of Colombia. And then when I really go on a little faster, I began to play a little bit of guaguancó, of Afro-Cuban guaguancó. So it's a way just to show even that the clave, it's more known as Afro-Cuban music. That element, it's all connected in all the diaspora in Latin America.
So, Samuel, this piece is for cajon and cajita. You want to tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, I wanted to put it, one of the things that I love about percussion is the diversity of instruments. And of course, no one can master everything. It's an infinite world. But cajon is a beautiful instrument that came from Peru, and then it was brought by Paco de Lucia to Spain and evolving what is known the cajon flamenco. So for me, that's a very important instrument about this connection between Americas and Ibero-American, and how our traditions of Latin America then came back to Spain. So it completes the circle. Yes, this cycle is very important. And the cajita, it's a box called log drum that it's inspired on the hollow pieces of wood that they used to have in Africa to communicate between tribes, and it's like a let's say a Western version of those sounds, and it sounds like a marimba. So for me, it connects a little bit the sound of Africa and the sound of the Pacific coast of Colombia that use marimba de chonta with Peruvian music that's very Pacific, and back to Africa and to Spain. And I like to have those two because they're two. One is a cajon and the other is a cajita. They are like basically hollow boxes.
Tell me about the process of recording, because you seem to have so much fun playing with yourself. You found
Well,
you found a way to play a duet with yourself. It's hard enough to do it with another person when you're doing it on tape, but you seem to be playing off of each other, so it's hard to understand how does a piece like that start.
well, these pieces are built on motifs. Or it's because percussion music, you cannot say that you can build a melody or something like that, but you have motifs. So it's how you organize those motifs and how you could create a direction using the motif, the repetition of motifs and the variation of the motifs. So basically, with the cajon and cajita, the first thing I did was to play the cajon. And I began, when I was playing the cajon, I imagined a melody, whatever, I don't know. I imagined something. But that helped me to create a form and some breaks. And it just came, it was totally improvised. But I felt that it had some direction, that it was somewhere, that it was a space, and all that is because I imagine I was playing with music with another musician. And then when I played the cajita, I just played one time on top of the cajon that I did, trying to understand the direction, the points of arrival, the spaces. And once you understand those points, you begin to play like if you're improvising. So it's like an improvisation when you're with someone else. There's moments that you just can't create music. And when you do it overdubbing, you just have to make sure you get your points of arrival. Like if you want to say something, you just make sure what the phrases you want to say, and then you just go with the flow.
Samuel, one of the things that have been intrigued is the album that you did, that it was called Forced Displacement. And that is a phrase in Colombia that it became, unfortunately, very common. Desplazamiento forzado. And I wonder if you can talk a little bit about your impulse to do that piece, and not so much also just as a musical thing, but as a social statement, perhaps, and what it represents for you.
Well, yeah, it's a very tough subject to talk about in Colombia, because in my research and the way everybody feels is like it's very hard to take any position on a situation like that, because everybody's a victim. So it cannot be a political thing, because everybody has suffered. I personally didn't have to suffer the violence directly in my family, but I had to see a lot of stuff and had to live in Colombia in the most difficult time that the country had. It was the 90s. It was when that war went totally out of control. So the idea of the project came because in the around 2012, the Colombian government at the time began to do a peace process with the FARC, that now it ended up being the president of Colombia getting a Nobel Prize because of that effort. And it has a lot of things to get better, and it's very hard to also take a political statement about it. But what is undeniable is that there was a terrible conflict in the country, and thanks to that process, you could talk about it. You could express and call it what it was. It was a conflict. There was a political conflict. It was a social conflict, not only a terrorist situation. There was a really deep social problem that led for many years to that conflict. So in that ambience that we were able to talk, I think many Colombians, many of my friends, we were thinking, okay, we have to, how we get it kind of involved or something, and the only way maybe I think as a musician I can get involved and support the people who have suffered is dedicating my art and do something to the memory of those people who have suffered because of the war. So that idea that I wanted to do dedicated to those victims, it took me to research how me as a Latin jazz percussionist, hand percussionist, could do something, because the music of Colombia is so diverse, so rich, and have to find a symbol. So that research, and talking to a lot of folkloric people who study folklore in Bogota and are into social activism, they told me the guy to go is Emilsen Pacheco. Emilsen Pacheco is the master folklore percussionist from Bullerengue in the area of Urabá. The area of Urabá is one of the most hard areas in Colombia, affected since the beginning of the 20th century with terrible violence. When I grew up in Colombia, it was an area that it was hard to go. But yeah, I went there. I talked to Emilsen. He explained me. He talked to me. We talk about the situation, how he saw the music, how he was fighting in his community for education in folklore, and how he saw his music, bullerengue, as a solution for many of the social problems that they found in those towns. So that ended up in my project, the fourth displacement.
So this next piece is you at the piano. So this is interesting to me as a musician because um, the prejudice is that, well, percussionists, they don't play piano, they're percussionists, and on the other hand, pianists, because you're a good pianist, I can tell. Pianists don't play percussion as their main instrument. So you're a complete musician, is what I'm trying to say, because you inhabit both worlds, your harmonic world, the piano world, and also this metrical world of percussion and everything in between.
Yeah, I think to play any harmonic or melodic instrument is very important for any musician, but especially for percussionists, because that idea of percussionists don't really understand so much music or whatever. I have to deal with that since I began to study music, and one of my maybe goals in life was to try to change a little bit that misconception, because a percussion is an instrument that has maybe doesn't have the same amount of notes, so you are very limited in the amount of notes and sound that you can create, but that doesn't limit the amount of expression of musical communication that you can transmit with the percussion. So I think, to understand of the capabilities of the percussion, the more music you know, the more understanding of harmony and form, and it gives you more elements to play your percussion. So for me, the process of composing, of writing, understanding a little bit of harmony is also gives me a lot of material to understand other people's music. So when I go to do a gig, I try to interpret the composition, not only think, okay, I'm a percussionist, I'm gonna do all the things that I just practice in my home, all these riffs, all these crazy breaks, all my technique. Yeah, that's the first step. But when you're gonna play, you have to interpret and you have to understand what the composer wanted to say in the music. And it's harder in percussion. It's very hard because I get too many times with great composers when they have everything written for the saxophones, everything, and they just come and tell me, no, just bring your magic. And I'm like, bring your magic is what should I do? I don't know, just play your colors. So basically you like have to compose what colors I'm gonna play. Do I gonna play a chimes here? How I play the shaker? When I play a drum, maybe I just don't play a drum. I could play a simple pattern, something complicated. I have to actually make a lot of composition and orchestration decisions. So the more you understand music, the better your decision will be towards the composition.
Given that we're talking about all this stuff, how has been the experience with playing with orchestras with the congas? Because I imagine in some context, I saw this video with the Berlin Philharmonic, and some of those players perhaps had never played with conga drums before, and I wonder how was that experience and blending that sound with the sound of the orchestra for you.
Well, the first time I did it was in Bogota with the Orquesta Filarmónica de Bogotá, and it was very scary because I premiered another piece called Ciudad Oculta, that it was a piece for 8 congas. So when I began to put the 8 congas in the rehearsal in front of the orchestra, I saw the faces of the musicians going like this. All these classical musicians were like, what is 8 congas on a stand doing in front of a symphony orchestra? And the conductor, my friend, is like being my associate on this endeavor of playing congas with symphony. The first he told me, it was the premiere, and he told me, don't worry about how it's going to sound. We're gonna go to play from top to the end. He knew what he was doing. He needed the musicians to listen the whole concept of the piece so they could understand what was the idea, because the first reaction was just like, and they could just strike, and if they say we don't play this music, they don't play. But he said, don't worry about mistakes, we go to play from top to the end. When we finished playing that time, musicians clapped because they understood that it was a serious piece of music. So then their reaction was, they support me. Oh no, let's do this. They began to interact like if we were playing with a small group. And when we did the second piece, that it was also a premiere, a Regreso in Berlin. Also, of course, at the beginning, there were all these German musicians. They were like, wow, this 6 congas, what's going to happen? But it's very important also the music, it's very well written for them. Since the notation, all the articulations, everything, so the musicians feel comfortable. And they said, this is very well written, this is great music, we're gonna play it. So there's no, it feels support. It was a teamwork, very beautiful teamwork.
You mentioned the 8 congas, and that was where I was driving with the tuned congas, because yes, Patato and Candido and those players and there's a sort of tuning and thing, but you have extended that. You have done work with 7 and 8 congas, and how do you tune it? Like a whole scale?
It depends. It's whatever the composer wants to do. You have 8. Of course, the range of the tumbadoras is not like a piano, so you have limited range, maybe an octave and a half. But you can do any scale you want. With the notes you want. Pentatonic scales are really more easy to blend with other music because they don't define a tonality. But you could do a octatonic scale, a whole tone scale, any scale you want. The flamenco scale, I have sometimes playing all the kind of more flamenco with the double tensions and everything, and it's just playing like those sounds in the congas, and it sounds beautiful. So it's just up to the musician, and the idea is there are notes. And when I play with 8 or 7 congas, people misunderstand the concept of it. That they think it's about playing with 7 congas. It's not about that. It's about being able to create melodies and have a more deep harmonic development in the instrument.
So this piece is for kalimba and maracas, and what I've noticed is that instead of the kalimba, who is the melodic instrument, being the soloist, I get the feeling the maracas are the soloist, and I really am a big fan of Venezuelan maraca players, and I know that you obviously have that tradition. Is there a tradition of maraca playing in Colombia as well?
Well, yeah, of course, because the plains that we share between Colombia and Venezuela is 1/3 of Colombia. So this the difference, big difference between Colombia and Venezuela is that Venezuela these planes are really big, so they are more diverse, and this music, the música llanera, it's kind of is became like a national pride in Venezuela. In Colombia, música llanera, the music from the plains, is very important, it's very strong, but it's only in a region of Colombia. It is not a national pride like the way it's in Venezuela. But the biggest festivals of maracas are happening actually in Colombia. And the only difference between what separates Venezuela and Colombia is a river. So basically, all this area it's together. The border, the political border, is just something invented that, but tradition doesn't follow those rules. You know, folklore it goes from one to another. It's so we have very important tradition of música llanera in Colombia too.
And what about the kalimba?
And the kalimba, I love kalimba. I the first one I saw playing the kalimba was Richard Bona, because I used to play. When I used to play with Richard, I used to play with the kalimba. He never taught me because, but I saw him how he was
You're
doing
gonna
it.
steal
And
his
then
licks.
yes, and I see at least what's the concept of the patterns, you know, what's the principle. And then I was actually in a tour and I got stuck in Budapest for a week. So there's one of the most amazing percussion stores that I've ever seen in my life is in the center of Budapest. He collects percussion from all over the world, and he had a kalimba. And I said, like, you know what, my friend, I'm gonna buy a kalimba. And I began just use the kalimba for me to relax during the tours. And then I went to do a tour with a Polish band in Poland. And I was just jamming with my kalimba in the soundcheck just to relax. And he was, why did you play the kalimba in the concert? I'm like, really? You want me to play kalimba in the... So I'm not a kalimba player, you know, there's kalimba players. And he's like, oh, no, you sound great, play. And we follow you. So like, okay. And I kind of like it. And then I came back to New York and have a gig with my band. I said, like, you know what? I'm going to begin to play my kalimba. And it's just relaxing. It's beautiful. And also, well, that tune, the idea was to connect that part of the South American instrument, because the maracas maracas don't come from Africa. The maracas are a traditional indigenous instrument. Mm. And then it's very interesting to combine something that doesn't have that African influence. It's pure, more indigenous, and of course gypsy and Spanish, but doesn't have a strong African like other instruments in South America. And kalimba, that is a pure African instrument.
thank you very much for sharing your musical world with us, with Ori-Gen, with the incredible knowledge and experience that you have. It's really quite a feast. I wonder if there is anything more to add, but we're just we've had so much chocolate from you. Thank you.
Well, I just want to thank you, Pablo and Fernando, for the opportunity for opening this window. I want to thank you for the job that you guys are doing. And I'm really honored to be part of the Ori-Gen collective. I think it's a really wonderful idea. And it's very important that as the musicians get together and do it, because sometimes it's difficult and we complain about the situation and how people have to get more respect about our traditions and everything, but I think if it's our duty to if we don't get together to do it, nobody's gonna do it also. Like we should do it and get together and put these concerts and spaces for Latin American music to be seen more widely.